He was shocked when the customer made a payment with his hand. Well, this is an RFID implant injected underneath the skin, and once it's there, you can make payments, open doors, and even unlock your car, just like a contactless card.
Magic.
People with chips in their palms are already living among us and paying for purchases with them. In many countries, e.g. Sweden, Germany, USA, more and more people are implanting NFC microchips under the skin of their palms. And it's not about any science fiction. These chips allow you to pay for purchases, open doors, log into a computer, and even start a motorcycle with a swipe of the hand. They're the size of a grain of rice and work like a proximity card, but hidden inside you. Some say the convenience of the future. Others, the first step to total surveillance.
Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give our praises to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, Bashim Rakakodash, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations unto the 144,000. Brother Kyle here back with another lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. Right, and as we saw these two videos here in the beginning, you know, it's getting more and more serious, you know, with this chip that's coming out. You know, the mark of the beast, right, as we've been pushing for years and warning you all, you know, about what's to come, right, because these elites, they don't care about anybody. They don't care whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, you know, they care about their agenda, right. Now, as you could see in the first video, you know, this guy as well as the other one was shocked, you know, because apparently they never seen it before. So the thing about it is, it just goes to show how, and you can tell it's jigs, you know, it just goes to show how they're ignorant of all that's going on, right? And we should start with our scripture, you know, one of the classics, as we would say, is 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11. It says, "Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices." Right? So those two jakes in the video, right? Satan can get advantage of them because they're ignorant of his devices, right? But we as the prophets, you know, bringing out the truth, you know, on a daily basis, they we feed in the flock and letting you all know that, hey, do not be ignorant of Satan's devices. You know, we're bringing it forth and showing you the undiluted truth, you know, because this thing here is not a game, you know, it's something serious, right? These devils on them, they're not playing. So you're seeing, even in the thumbnail here, right? Even in the thumbnail here, you're seeing what? The end of privacy, and then you're seeing half man and half cyborg, and that's what you're going to become. Really and truly, that's what you're going to become. Because, as the guy said at the end, let's play back.
People with chips in their palms. Others, the first step. Some say the convenience of the future. Others, the first step to total surveillance.
So you see that? Some people are saying it's basically for convenience, you know, and then the others say total surveillance, right? So it just goes to show some people are weakened to whether it's a portion of the truth where this is concerned, or all the way, or 100% truth, like those of us in the truth, you know. It's still have people that know, and then other people who just ignorant, right? And the scriptures say, let me get precepts on that. It's firstly Sirach 5 and 15. It says, be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or a small, right? Now, ironically, this is a small, but it's a big matter, right? Small meaning the size of the chip, but it's something that's big because it leads you to the destruction. You know what the scripture says about that in Revelation 13 and 16 and Revelation 14 and 9, right? It tells you about it, it gives you a warning, and it tells you what will happen in Revelation 14 and 9 if you do take it, right? So, you go ahead, don't listen. Let's get one more. Proverbs 25 and 2, it says, it is the glory of the Most High to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter, right? So if you consider yourself a king, right, under the banner of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, you know, you will do what needs to be done and, you know, search. But again, these sheikhs and them, they have no time to study what's going on in the world, right? Look how far this thing reached. This thing been outside for years, showing in movies, all these different things, and you still being surprised in 2025. You still being surprised about people having microchips in their hand. Like, really? Come on, sleeping, Jake is sleeping, right? But then again, the Lord say, let me see if I get up, he said. Alright, this is Daniel 12 and 1. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never there was in nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. Right? So this talking about Jacob's trouble that's to come. And we know that MOTB, right? Implementing that MOTB by force and whatnot, right? It's going to be the start of Jacob's trouble, right? Because, you know, you're going to have a lot of rebellion and all these different things, you know? Or even let's say Jacob's trouble kick in and they want to use the MOTB to try and sort it out, you know? But I believe the first reason, because remember, in order they're going to push a lot of people to take it willingly, and then eventually they're going to push it by force, which I believe is going to cause riots and whatnot. And, you know, according to 2 Ezra 15, right, they wouldn't think a man would decide to go into a city and whatnot, you know. So in a time like that, right, it's going to be hectic. So it goes on in verse 2, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt, right? So that is what it's saying, right? Those of you jakes who, you know, out there in the world and, you know, refuse to take heed to the truth, right? It has some who awake to everlasting life, right, which is the prophets, you know, basically the 1/3, you know, which is the elect, and the rest of the 1/3, right? They woke up to everlasting life. And then it has some go wake up to shame and everlasting contempt. Because why? They didn't take heed, they didn't pay attention, they didn't even take time to consider, right? As the Lord say what here in Isaiah 1 and 3, it says, the ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel do it not know, my people do it not consider, right? So it's like they don't know. It's one thing to not know, but they don't even consider. They don't even bother to say, well, hey, let me try and find out, you know, what this about. You know, some people are saying some crazy stuff here. Like, let me see how or why they reach this conclusion. You know, it's sounding weird, but you know, you will try to figure out more about it, what's going on, right? Because out of the blue, you might see, you know, some men just sort of pop up on the street just so preaching and claiming to say they know the Bible. Let's see what that has to say, you know. But Jake, as scripture said, they don't even consider, you know. All these men like these women, you know, as it's saying Isaiah 3, you know, they walk forth with stretch forth necks, you know, they're just full of pride. They don't want to hear or see anything, you know, that we have to give them. And we is the mouth of the Lord. So, as the scripture say here in Hosea 4 and 6 says what? My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy power, I will also forget thy children. Right? So the Lord said, well, hey, you reject me, I will reject you. Simple as that. Because at the end of the day, remember, the Lord don't need us, you know, we need him. Right? So if you feel you could coast on the Lord and feel like you have another way in, what the Lord say about that? John 10 and verse 1, it says, verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. And that goes to show you, right? So if it is you feel you could enter any other way except for through Yahweh Shai, right, then he's same as a thief and a robber, you know. And it's obviously you're gonna get the punishment fitting that, you know. Because the scripture, even in the law, it tells you thou shalt not steal and all these different things, right? So the whole fact that you ignoring or you trying to set aside your shy, right? Like you have the power to do that. Hey, he don't have to save you, right? So if you rejecting him and the knowledge that he given you, right, which this year is the biggest prophecy it have, right, especially in our time, because it's something serious. You can't be forgiven for it. So this is why we just push the MOTB so heavy. This is not something you can be forgiven for. Let's bring it out. So this is Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16. It says, and he calls it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Right? So who's the he? The he is Esau Edom. Right? Starting with Babylon, which is the modern day Babylon is America. Right? They're trying to make America great again, as they say, but their main objective is to what? To have total control, So at the end of it all, whether or not you're free, you're poor, you're rich or poor, free or born, you had to receive that mark, right? Because at the end of the day, the only way is through your shy. So it's either you're taking your shy side or you're taking the devil's side. It goes on, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, and or the number of his name. And we clearly saw in the video that the man and them was using it to buy and all these different things, and they even mentioned you could start your motorbike with it, you could open car doors, all these different things, because it's a device. And the fact that it have all those electronic what does call it, those gosh, damn mosquitoes. But yeah, it have the electric pulse, I'll just call it that, the magnetic waves, that would affect you, because your body already runs, with certain frequency of electricity and whatnot. But this give off radiation and whatnot, as the scripture will tell you, source will bust out in the skin and whatnot, right? Which we're gonna get that as well. Now just read verse 18. It says, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, right? Which we know as 666. So let me get the one, and then I'll go to Revelation 14 and 9. So this is Revelation 16, and I'll start at verse 1. It says, and I heard a great voice out of the temple, saying to the 7 angels, go your ways and pour out the vials of the wrath of the Most High upon the earth. And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. Right? Because we read in Revelation 13 that if you take it, is the number of a man, you're gonna have the mark either in your forehead or in your right hand, right? So in Revelation 40, even gives you a more plain description of the destruction you will receive for taking it, right? Which goes here, Revelation 14 and 9. It says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark, right? So you see it's a receive, right? So you have to purposely it's either you take it willingly, but one way or the other you take it willingly, because the thing about it is they will come threatening you and whatnot and this and that. So it's still a choice regardless, So even if them is still like physically force it and you hold it down and purposely chuck it in your hand, and hey, that was supposed to happen, because nothing can happen if it is the Lord who wants it to happen. You understand? So that is something we have to understand as well. And that is why a lot of people can't stomach the truth, because they fail to realize that none of this is in our hands, whether we like it or not. None of this is in our hands. You know? Read Romans 9, it'll tell you. This is all about the Lord's doing. We can't counsel the Lord. He know the reason why it is he doing certain things. You know? So it goes on, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, right? Righteous judgment. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and the presence of the Lamb, right? So this talking about what? They're not talking about hell, like some Christians who want to believe, but this talking about the nuclear destruction. You're going to be tormented, right? Because the scripture told you about it, how they're going to be tormented, right? Let's get it. So there's 2 Peter 3:10. It says, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, talking about the missiles, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burnt up. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of person ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? Right? So you're asking, if you know all these things going to happen, what kind of mindset you going to have in that time? Right? You can't be ignorant. Right? You cannot be ignorant. You don't know. Verse 12, it says, looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of the Lord, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Right? So the Lord saying in that time, when all that going to happen, what kind of person you going to be in that time? How are you going to be thinking? How are you going to be functioning? Right? Because if the scripture could tell you the elements going to melt with fervent heat, that heat going to be so hot, you know. That is why it leads me to this scripture as well. It's Zechariah 14:12. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. The plague is what? Right? In Job 5:20 going down, it tells you about the 7th plague, which we know is the missile. Right? It says, their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. So you see the kind of heat that's going to push for your eyes to literally melt, and your tongue going to melt in your mouth. That's torture, right? And that is the kind of destruction, right, that you're going to get. That is judgment you're going to receive for taking that. You know, all those people who take that, that is it for what the scriptures say about that. Jeremiah 8:3, it says, and death shall be chosen rather than life by all the residue of them that remain of this evil family, which remain in all the places whither have driven them, say the Lord of hosts. Right? So you see, who was driven away? Jacob. So we know it's the Israelites the Lord talking about. So the Lord saying, death going to be chosen rather than life. These people are choosing death. We don't care if the heathens and them take it, because they have no salvation to get in the first place. But Jake, you're going to take that, you signing allegiance to this devil, you know. And anytime you power with the enemy, you're going to die with the enemy, you know. So, hey, I hope this lesson was edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai Shai. Till next time, we say Shalom. And a bad ball to this place, and he saw all the wickedness. Shalom.